In this video, we are going to cover the Cost Planner tab and all the functionality around the Cost Planner. So in CostrixIQ, you can see there are many dashboards, many tabs, but about 90% of the work a user will do and a user will interface with is within one tab called the Cost Planner, which is really the centralized source of all of our information. And in this video, we're going to give an overview of that Cost Planner tab and some of the functionality. So to go to the Cost Planner tab, it's the red tab on the bottom. And so this is your Cost Planner. And as you can see, it's quite wide. There's a lot of columns, but the user interface has been designed for the user to open and close columns as required, so they can kind of control their overall view. So let's cover at a high level the functionality relating to the Cost Planner. So the first thing you will see is what we call the ribbon analytics along the top. And so the ribbon is always in view. And so wherever the user is, they always have access to the buttons and functionality and the metrics and analytics that the ribbon is showing. The first thing that you will see, which is quite clear, is it's color-coded. And so right now, in this make-believe scenario, we're currently below our profit targets. And so our ribbon is red. However, we have created a profit plan that we believe, if can be achieved, will meet our profit targets. And so while the main ribbon is red, there is an item to the right that I will scroll into where you can see it's giving an analysis of what we call our stretch position or our profit plan position. So again, from this centralized dashboard, a user has the ability to be working on the document, seeing their analytics and seeing their stretch position. And so let's zoom in on that ribbon and we'll give an overview to some of the functionality. So on the left is live metrics. So the user does not need to switch between tabs, switch between views to understand some high-level metrics on the project. The metrics that we're showing on the left, we're currently showing the contract price. So that's the selling number going through the organization's books as a contract sum. We're also showing the project number. So if you have built in items that aren't going through the book, such as by client items outside the contract, but you still want to report on it, it also shows the project value. It shows your profit percentage above the line. And it also shows you your rate per unit, in this case, dollars per square meter on the project level, because this is from a client centricity point of view. A lot of the time you're designing and you're writing your cost plan to meet a client's dollars per square meter or rate per unit. And so that metric is also here. So you have instant access. As I change those numbers, I'll just show an example. I change the 20. When I hit enter, those numbers are automatically updated. So the dashboard is live and instant at all times. And that is similar in the case of my stretch analytics on the right. Here I can see if I achieve my profit plan, what would be my profit percentage? And it also gives me the dollar figure in terms of if I hit that versus my target, am I in surplus or am I in deficit? So you can see that information on the right. In addition, I'll cover some of the other things. Your sectors, you'll be able to see when we go through, you can open up your sectors. It gives the naming convention of your sectors, so it's easily identifiable what sector relates to what scope of works. Over to the right, you have the ability to turn on and off system settings. So a lot of the system settings are set in the general settings tab that is behind an administrative password. And so sometimes the team may not know what the system has been set to. So in order for them to understand what the system settings are, such as target gross profit, minimum gross profit, default markups, and if you're using cost recovery, the cost recovery percentage, that is found in this element above the internal notes. Those metrics can be turned on and off from the general settings. So you can decide to show them, decide not to show them. And then within the ribbon, we have a number of buttons that are always available to you. And it's all about functionality within the system. So in the group above our descriptions, we have an insert, copy, paste, cut, and delete. That is in relation to rows or lines. And so if we want to copy or cut and insert, copy and paste, delete rows, these are the buttons that you're going to utilize. So as an example, if I wanted to insert a line above this subheading called engineers, I can click the insert button, a pop-up box opens up, and I can decide what type of line I want. I'll cancel that for now. So that's the insert. If I wanted to copy that, I could copy the line and then insert. That now gives me a copy. If I want to delete, I can delete the row. The code doesn't matter where you're clicking. You can have the description highlighted, you can have the unit cell highlighted, you can have multiple rows highlighted. It doesn't matter. Whatever the row selection is, when you go to delete or insert or copy or paste, it will take the row selected. It doesn't matter where you have selected it. So they're your row buttons. Going along, we also have 3 buttons here called transfer quantities, copy quantities, and clear quantities. Now that relates to adjusting quantities for entire sectors or portions of work. So if I want to move a sector into another sector, I can transfer quantities. If I want to make a duplicate of a sector, I can copy quantities. And if I want to clear out an entire sector, I can clear quantities. And when those buttons are clicked, code runs and you go down that process. The next buttons along relate to some of the advanced functionality. In the system, you have the ability to manually adjust your markup per line. So I might decide I want to mark up a line at 100%, or I might want to sell this at $20 a unit and it reverse engineers my markup. But I may just want to use my default markup in the system. I want to go back to that. It's not about entering in a formula. You just highlight the cell, click default formulas, and it will automatically reload that default formula back in. The link to subcosts button is when you want to link a unit cost or a unit cell to the subcost module, where you may have multiple elements making up a unit rate. And so if you want to go down that process, you would select your unit cost or your unit cell, click link to subcosts, and you go from there. The next button is called lock cells. Now the lock cells button is really only to be used when the contract sum, the full contract sum, is locked down and you're maybe making final adjustments to your cost. So it's probably the contract has been signed and completed, nothing is to change, and you're just making some final adjustments on the cost side before you may load this into a system. And if you click lock cell, in effect, what that is going to do, it is going to override everything on the cell side and lock it in, and then you'll be able to adjust the cost side without affecting any of the cell side. So a unique button. It will be used very rarely, if at all, but you do have that functionality. And there is also a spell check button. If you want to run spell check on any of the process, it will run a spell check on the selection or on the entire document. Further along the ribbon, we have a highlight, unhighlight, and unhighlight all button. That is if you want to highlight some of the descriptions. You have the ability to highlight, and you have the ability to unhighlight or unhighlight the entire document. We have another button called Show Sector Cost and Cell. So the standard view, while you can open and close your sectors, and I'll go through that in a moment, it always shows the total cost and total cell. But a user may want to understand what is the cost per sector. But it starts to become quite a lot of columns. So to manage the user interface, a user can turn this on and off. I may turn on showing the individual sectors. And so now, in addition to having my individual sector quantities, I can now see my individual sector totals on the cost side and the cell side, as well as my totals. As you can see, it can become quite a lot of columns. So we may want to turn that off and just look at the totals again. And I can do that via that button. And finally, there is a functionality to tag PC sum items. And in order to open that functionality, there's a button here called Show PC Sum. That opens another column where you can tag lines as PC sums. Those PC sums are automatically updated and added to the exclusions and clarifications. And once again, you can close that off. So that is the main ribbon functionality. The last button I'll include in the ribbon is at the right-hand side. There is the button to initiate the upload template. So if you want to load a takeoff or a cost plan from another system, you would load that into the upload template, and then to include that into the CostrixIQ, you would click this button, it would instigate the upload process, and you would go from there. So that's where you instigate the upload process. So from there, we're now going to look at the portions of a cost plan, and just so you can kind of understand how it's broken up. So the first thing is we have a line identifier. Every line is identified uniquely. It is consistent through all the reports. So when you're combining multiple reports, like a detailed report and a specification report, the line identifier links those lines together. They are auto-calculated. They're always sequential. If I was to add a quantity into the next line, it's auto-populated. If I was to make the line above hidden, which we're going to speak about in a moment, the line numbering is automatically updated to skip. And so your client-facing lines will always be sequential. And so the line identifiers are automated. From there, we have some line tags, and this is how we can tag individual lines to do certain functionality. As I've shown before, we have the ability to hide lines, which means they will not be included in external reports. So in this make-believe version, I have some costs I want to charge to the job, but I'm not going to on-charge them on the selling side to the client. And so I don't want these lines to appear in my client reports. And so I tag them as hidden. And so that's how you can manage your hidden lines. Next across, we have our options tags. This is where you can group lines into option groups through the drop-down box. And when you want to analyze your options, you can go to your options dashboard and understand your option groups here. And so that is how you manage your options. We spoke about profit planning earlier. Any line that is a profit planning line, which is called a stretch line, is tagged as stretch. Now, you can't turn a normal line into a stretch line. That's restricted. You would insert, if you want to insert one of these lines or insert a profit plan line, you would just insert and you would select from the box that comes up, you would insert a stretch line. And so that line will automatically come up as stretch. And so I've locked this down so you can't remove the stretch tag. That is just a unique stretch line item, but it's very easy to see. Now, in terms of stretch lines are completely internal profit planning lines. They are not included in any external reports. So you do not need to hide them, and you can't hide them. Just understand that a stretch line is already hidden. They do not appear in any type of report. And also in our system, stretch lines are analyzed and reported uniquely, so they don't interrupt your analysis of above the line items. There is also a design tag, and this relates to the design report that you can produce. And a design report is a report in the reports tab that you can produce at the very bottom. It's a cost side report where you can tag certain line items only, and only the line items that are tagged will include on the report. And as opposed to a client report that prints the selling side of the cost plan, it will print the cost side of the cost plan with the quantities and rates. So this is a way to collaborate with your design partners, be it in-house or externally, to present cost plans to them, to provide them with the insights and the analytics that they can design to the budgets that we're targeting. And so they're all managed through the design. The last line tag that's in here that you can't see at the moment is the insights line tag. So from the insights column, insights dashboard, you can open up the insights column. I now have a column called insights available to me. I will scroll up and you can see where I have tagged certain lines. I've grouped certain lines together. And this is how you can group any combination of lines in an unstructured format throughout the cost plan, combine them together and analyze them in their group. And so that's done through the insights column, which I've now closed. So they're your line tags that you can put against every single line. Next, we have our database or our descriptions. The important thing about our descriptions is in your templates, you would load your full database of costs within here. You would use that as a scoping mechanism if you're cost planning early, almost as a checklist of what to include, what not to include, adding in your quantities as you go. But you do have the ability, the description heading is a button. You have the ability to close non-active lines. So here you can see I've clicked that button. I can now just see my active lines, but now I may want to get access to my full database because the scope's changed. I need to adjust. I can click the button again. It opens up my full database. So I have the access to open and close my database as required from the description button. Next, we have our unit of measure, which is a drop-down box. Now this list can be adjusted and amended by your organization's admin person through the lists tab, which is protected by an admin list, but that unit of measure can be customized to whatever units you use. Next, we have our quantities, and this is where our sectors come in. So in CostrixIQ, we can price a project in sectors. Think of sectors as a portion of the works. So in this make-believe scenario, I have a 3-floor fit out that I've priced in 3 different sectors. I've priced my professional services fee in a sector, my construction prelims in a sector, job costed overheads in a sector, some bike line items and some stretch targets, all in individual sectors. And you can see that those sectors and the total are showing as green, which means we are showing those columns. But again, just like we have an accordion style functionality in the database vertically, we have an accordion style functionality with the quantities horizontally. We may only want to look at levels 1, 2, and 3 right now. We can come in and close the sectors up. So I only want to be showing levels 1, 2, and 3. I'm now only seeing levels 1, 2, and 3 quantities. I may want to only price or analyze level 1. I'm now looking at level 1 by itself. Or I may want to look at everything in totality. I now have all my columns open. Client may ask me to add some scope, but it's coming out of a different CapEx budget, so I need to price this in a separate sector, because remember, every sector can be reported individually. So I might want to open a sector, might want to open sector 9. I can open sector 9, give it a name, give it a rate, and all of a sudden I have a new sector open to me where I can be cost planning. And so that is how the sectors can operate on the cost planner. Next across, and I'll zoom in so you can get a little bit more view, we have our currencies, our markups, and our metrics. So we have a cost side of the cost plan, we have a markup, we have a sell side of the cost plan. We also show profit per line. So again, the system is protected where you can adjust the cost. So I've adjusted the cost, but if I try and adjust the total, it doesn't allow me. So the system is protected. You cannot override something that isn't allowed. There is a markup column which controls the sell side. So you can link your sell side through the markup. I may decide to mark something up at 50% and it will change my unit sell. Or I might have an agreed rate, or I want to adjust that sell price individually. I might want to sell that for $200 as a unit sell. When I add in $200, it reverse engineers the markup for you and it tells you what markup that is. So if I was to say 300%, and then that $300 is the master sell. So if I go and change my cost, it will change my markup, but not my unit sell. And as I said, that was originally at 25%, so I'll take that back to where it was. So I can manipulate lines through markup or through unit sell. I can then see my total sell. And as I said, with the show sector cost and sell, I can open that out and look at my totals per sector if I want to. Next, I can just see a profit per line as an analysis. And they're kind of the currencies and markups column. Next along, we have our declared margin column. And so some organizations may use the declared margin, some may not. If you are not using declared margin, on the declared margin dashboard or settings page, you have the ability to hide the column. So if you're not using it, you can hide it. So again, you can control that user interface. You can insert as many declared margin percentages as you like. It's an unlimited number. I've got 0 to 5% populated in this example. And so what you can see is here you can decide what margin level you want to apply per line, although it is recommended you would apply the same margin percentage per section. But you do have the ability as a user to apply different margins to different lines, but even to different sections. So you may sell your professional services with the 0% declared margin because it's professional services, your margin's in your fee. Whereas your construction items, if it's a construction project, you might declare a 5% margin or a 10% margin. But if you're also doing the audio visual, which is being supplied by the client, you may only take a 1% management fee on top of that. So you might declare a 1% margin. So you have the ability to adjust your declared margin here. And the system automatically calculates all of those margin levels and provides that to the client via the reporting as well. So complete flexibility of declared margins. Next, if you have subscribed to the trade packages module, you will also have the trade packages description column. And this is where the system works client facing and procurement facing. While you may present the cost plan to the client in the order of your sections, you may procure the lines within those sections from multiple different trades. You may package it up individually in an order that is different to the way your sections are structured. And so this is where your procurement codes would be preloaded into the system, and you would set these as a default, but then you have the ability to adjust the packages if you want to. And this is where you would tag lines into packages. So in this example, everything is packaged all together in this section, but I might have an area where I have floor coverings, where the prep and the carpet, I'm getting the rugs from a different supplier differently from the carpet, the vinyl's coming from somewhere else. I have an area where joinery might be coming from one package, but I might also separate high-end joinery from standard joinery into two separate packages, and I can adjust those packages. Or I might have a section that is multi-trade, such as toilets and showers, where I have partitioning, joinery, tiling and waterproofing, hydraulics, electrical, mechanical, and PC items. And so I can package those up into their packages in a flexible way on the right-hand side. And if I want to analyze my costs per trade package, I do that on the green trade packages dashboard, which is where I can see my cost per total, per sector, per trade package. So that is controlled at the trade package column. Next, we have the specification column. So an example of the specification column, if I go to my partitioning section, on my description, I might have a simple explanation, let's call it, of the description, such as single boarded partitioning up to 2700 mil high. But I might want to give the client some extra level of detail or a paragraph of assumptions behind that. You can add that in your specifications, and here in my specifications you can see I've gone and expanded on that, saying it's 100mm thick metal stud, single board at either side with 13mm plasterboard, talking about it being set and sanded with the skirting and the insulation and so forth. And the specification column, if you want to produce that in a report, then you would select your specification report, and that will include the specification to the client. The next column along is our locked away column. So in CostrixIQ, we can deal with items of scope that have been secured, won, and contracted, and may be in another system, while you are still quoting the majority of the works. In this example, I have my professional services fees have been signed off. I don't want to remove those from this system because I want to understand the project as a whole, and the vast majority of the project is still in this system as the master source because it's still in a pre-contract stage, an estimating stage. But I don't want to lose the analytics, but also I don't want to accidentally change anything that's been procured because they're fixed. And so I have the ability to lock away a line item by tagging the line, and the heading for locked away is a button. So right now I can see that certain lines are locked away because they're red. If I try and change any item in there, including quantities, so including items that would normally be unlocked, the entire line is locked. I have the ability to unlock a line if I need to. So I just click that button and it unlocks the line. They're now not red. I can adjust something. I can add another line to the lock away. I might have procured something else and I want to lock that away, and then I can click the button again and it says now lines are now locked. And so I might have some lines spread throughout that are locked. The next column along is our custom reporting. So in CostrixIQ, we have a couple of preset reports, and we have a report where the user can decide the level of transparency to provide. And that really relates to the detailed reports and the options reports. So the user can pick the quantity and rate version, which is everything. They can produce the standard version, which is just the description and a section total. Or if you want to decide what level of transparency and detail per section you want to give, you have the ability to select the custom report. And if you select the custom report, the system will provide the level of transparency that has been nominated within the custom reporting column. And so I may have an area, a section where I just want to provide the line summary. I might have a section where I just want to provide the description. I might have a section where I want to provide the quantity and rate. And I might have a section where I just want to provide the quantities only. And so again, these may be set up in your template as set, which is typical, but you have the ability to come in and change that if required. So you have complete flexibility in the level of transparency you provide in your reporting. The last column along is an internal notes column. This is free text. This is basically so that you can write notes as you go along, or you want to write notes for someone else to inspect along the way. You might include the highlighting functionality. So I might want to highlight against my engineers, just to highlight that out. And then I might write a note in here saying, received verbal of X, Y, Z. And so I can write some notes in my notes. It's free text. It doesn't get included in any external reports. It's a purely internal notes functionality if you wanted to use that functionality. I'll remove that highlighting. There we are. So there are all the columns along the cost planner. A couple of other things with the cost planner. We have 32 main sections as called out in our section names. We also have one section called project sum. So we have our contract sums and our project sum. The project sum section is typically by client items that aren't going through your books, but you want to report on those metrics to the client overall. And so again, in the system, we can understand what's going through the books, but also those by client items. At the summary level, we can understand what's going through the books, but we can also understand those by client items. Where do you enter those by client items? So I will just close this up so we can see our active headings. You have your 32 sections as you go along, and the very last section, designated by the black underline, this last section is your by client or your project sum item. And so you can see we have descriptions, we have quantities. Because it is by client, we have numbers we can enter into the sell side, even though we're not really selling them. There is no cost, there is no profit, there is no trade package, but this will now report to the client all of those items that you may want to report to them. They might have a $5 million CapEx budget, but they've got $1 million they need to use for other things. So you want to show to the client, we're working to your $4 million CapEx budget, and these are the other items you've mentioned make up your other $1 million. This is how it works out. So when I present reports, the client can see the project holistically. So the last thing I really wanted to show in regards to the cost planner is the level of flexibility when it comes to the lines and the rows and how you can manipulate them. So in terms of, and it's really going to relate around this insert, copy, paste, cut, delete. Before I do that, I will just show in each section, you have your section heading, you have your lines, and then you have your analysis of that section. So you can see your cost, your sell, and your profit. Current is above the line, options are below the line options. These are your profit planning metrics, and this is the aggregate of all of them. So you can see per section just here some high level metrics. You can go to your dashboards to look at those metrics in a little bit more detail if you want to. And so now I'll just go through the flexibility of the cost planning section. So as an example, I have price certifications as an option in third-party professional services. I may have been asked to break that out into its own section by an external person or an internal person. And so instead of having to manually go and move these around and duplicate, we can undertake this quite quickly. I have a spare heading here, spare heading A. So I might go to spare heading A and call it certifications. I might give it a code CR. So now I have a certifications heading with CR codes. And I now want to, and I will show you very quickly on the summary page, you can see very quickly if I highlight these rows here, this is the option. It's sitting in the option under third-party professional services. So I want to take all of those line items, I want to cut them, and they're TP line items, and I want to insert them into my certifications. So code runs, it takes those line items, it removes them because I cut them, it removes them from third-party professional services, and I now have it in my certification section. They're now CR line numbers. You can see in the dashboard, the numbers have now automatically dropped into my certifications area. Let's say the client wants to proceed with that. I remove my option tags. They've now jumped across into above the line in my certification, so my reports are automatically updated when I print them. So that is an example of how you can cut and insert. I might want to duplicate these sections or a line. Let's say I want to duplicate a 3 lines. I can take 3 lines and I can copy them. I might want to insert them in this section. I can insert, and I now get an exact duplication of those 3 line items. So you can cut and insert, you can copy and insert. I can insert custom lines. If I want to, one of these lines doesn't cover the scope and I need to insert a custom line, I select where I want to insert it. Again, I can select anywhere in the cost plan. All you are selecting is the line or the row that you want it to be inserted above. So I'm going to insert it above joinery items. I click insert. It says what type of line do you want to insert? I'm going to insert a standard line. And so now I have a new standard line pre-populated with my defaults, including my default markup. So it's already set my default markup. So if I was to put a cost in, it will automatically assign a selling number to that. If I want to insert 4 lines at a time, and I'll do this where I have a spare section where I might not have a lot of lines. I have a spare heading here. I want to insert 4 line items. I can overflow the range if I have selected a valid selection. So I want to insert 4 line items. I select 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've selected that little line below there. If I click insert, once again, I get the box come up. What type of line? I want to insert 4 standard lines. The range opens up correctly. I have now my 5 lines because I inserted 4 with the 1 there. If I had accidentally clicked into the wrong area, the wrong zone to hit insert, I get an invalid selection. And it tells you where you can insert rows. So while I have the ability to customize, insert, copy, paste, delete, the system is restricting you to only do that where it is permissible. And so again, if I was to copy 3 line items and I tried to paste it in an invalid area, it will say invalid selection. I've copied 3 line items. 3 line items would paste over an incorrect selection. If I selected here, it gives me an invalid selection. But if I did have a valid selection where I do have 3 lines where I can paste over, it says, warning, you're now about to paste over. Do you want to proceed? And it pastes over the selection. So the system really controls what you can and can't do. So you can't break the structure of the document. And then, as I said, you can delete as well. It warns you because once you delete, you can't undo it. But if I accidentally try and delete something I'm not meant to delete, it'll say invalid selection. And so while you have complete customization, also have some safety and assurity that you won't be able to break the system. So you have all the flexibility within a system with the security settings set up that you can't break it. So that is the overview of the cost planner. As you can see, the user would be spending about 90–95% of their time in this one area. They have the ability to customize the view, to minimize the columns and the rows as required, so they can target and focus into a certain area, and then they can expand that out if they want to analyze at a macro level. They have complete manipulation and flexibility to customize the cost plan from a scope of works, from a margin level, a markup level, a unit cell level, the way they apply declared margins, the way they package up the project into trade packages, the ability to customize your reporting transparency. So an amazing amount of customization and flexibility built into the system, really to be designed so that it can work for your processes and the way you want to sell and the way you want to run your projects once you've been awarded after the sales process. So I hope that gave you a good overview of the cost planner. If there's any other information you want to understand about the cost planner or CostrixIQ in general, please feel free to reach out.